Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you.
Well, I'm very glad it isn't my birthday. Hello everyone and welcome to this review of the film Longlegs. I'm Sean Ferrick for What Culture Horror, and before we go on, I want to just absolutely say right now, this will be a spoiler full discussion, okay? So if you have not seen the film Longlegs, I strongly recommend pause this video, go and watch it, because you're going to want to talk about it the way that I need to talk about it. But to do that best, this has got to be a full spoiler review. So you have been warned, I will be discussing plot points, I will be discussing twists and surprises. Let's get into it. Longlegs, which is written and directed by Osgood Perkins, son of the late Anthony Perkins, has been distributed by Neon Films and Black Bear International overseas. This is a creepy film. This is... how best to describe this? This is a film that owes a lot to a lot of the police procedurals of particularly the 80s and the 90s. To say this up front, you're going to see a lot of comparisons, as I already have, to films like The Silence of the Lambs and Seven. But I want to say that up front because I don't want you to get the feeling that this film is simply a rehash of films like that. Because while there are plenty of homages going on, this is not simply a copy and paste film in that genre. Perkins' script takes a lot of inspiration from the satanic panic of the 80s and the 90s in the USA, which itself is a fascinating piece of history and certainly worth looking into with greater detail. The film is set while Bill Clinton is still president in the United States, as is evidenced by his portrait being on the wall of the police station. This does the film a service, not with the character of Clinton, but the time period in which it is set, which I will come to a little bit later on in this review. The film stars Micah Monroe as Lee Harker, and Monroe carries this film on her very capable shoulders, which is not in any way to suggest that the supporting characters are not strong in their own right, but she has the hardest job of all to do. And also because one of the things that, as the film went on, did strike me as a bit of a down, if you like, was this is weird. This film has a very strange tone, and it's right there from the beginning. And it did take me a little while to settle into it. I thought, you know, were they just trying to be weird for the sake of weird? And particularly in Monroe's character, I mean, she is so very clearly not okay for much of her screen time that I did have to go, hold on now, are we just waiting for her to snap? Now, we're not waiting for her to snap, and that weirdness does pay off. But that is something I wanted to again address toward the beginning of this review, is because I was sat there in the theater going, I wouldn't be sending her on any missions. I don't feel 100% comfortable with her in control. And now you discover why, as the film goes on, why she acts the way that she does. I think, if you like, it's a symptom of where we need to get to. She needs to act the way that she does. And of course, the film can't tell you that in the beginning. It can't say, trust us. So I'm going to say, but I'm assuming you've seen the film already, do you agree? Does where we get to pay off how aloof, how distracted Harker seems throughout the film? The other characters around her, but for the most of the film, it's Blair Underwood's Carter, who is there to be her, not foil per se, but the more straight man to her slightly out there investigator. And Underwood, again, is actually fantastic in this role because it's not over the top. He is so normal that it seems over the top and highlights just how off-putting Harker is in this part. The film is very slick, and it does use its stylization, I think, very well. It does have a few jump scares. There's one where it involves a Polaroid that I was sat there in a row very close to the screen, and almost to a person, you could hear us all hitting back down into our chairs again after we jumped. While there are extreme scenes which are sort of blink and you'll miss them, and they're slotted in throughout the relatively straightforward setting of the film, it's not overdone and it's not overused, and it's similar to the gore in the film, which is present. It's used sparingly because, of course, we live in an age where nothing is really taboo anymore on screen. And there are parts of this film that could have gone down the route of, okay, we're going to see just exactly what the inside of that person looks like. And for the most part, it doesn't do that. Which, again, I think overall, I think that strengthens how we see the film. If you like, it reminded me an awful lot of, I'll say it, Jonathan Demme's direction of Silence of the Lambs. There is a lot of gore in that film, but again, there isn't nearly as much as you think there's going to be. And that is how I would describe the crime scenes and the violence of this film as well. Very early in the film, Monroe's Harker is revealed to be at least partially psychic, and this threw me a little bit because of how straightforward the setting was. I thought, oh, okay, all right, so is this film going to take now a sharp turn and go in a different direction? And funny enough, it doesn't, or at least it doesn't for quite a while. And the fact that she might be mildly clairvoyant is such a small element of her character that one wonders, for a large part of the film, why they felt they wanted to include that. She uses this skill to help discover a murderer in one of the opening scenes, in a scene that is tense, and it's confusing, of course, because are we using magic now? And this effectively goes away for a little while in the film. Now, there are times where she picks up the phone and she might hear something, or she might hear a noise in the background, and you wonder, did anyone else hear that, or is that just her? But it's not in your face for quite some time. There's a great line that Underwood's Carter has when he says, you know, you beat the psychic number test 8 times, and she says, well, I missed 8 numbers as well. And he goes, well, partly psychic is still better than not psychic at all. And it feels like that was written over her character description as they were scripting this film. It works. It works because if this is a film in which there is magic, it doesn't tip its hand too early, and it doesn't overuse it. The question, of course, is her psychic ability connected to what we find out about the character? And my instinct is that yes, it is. That when the third act occurs, some of the, I think that magic is gone, but that does leave an issue with one scene at the end. Now, of course, what is going on? There are killings happening. Entire families are being murdered, or are they? But it's all to do with at least one child of the family will be celebrating their 9th birthday on or around the 14th of any given month. And they set up a scene very early on with Carter's wife and daughter, where you know full well, it's like, we're going to be visiting this house again, aren't we? And someone's going to have a birthday cake. I think it's done well. I think it's done well enough that it knows that you're going to expect this, and it plays on that, because by the time that we get there, it feels rather inevitable, but not in an I need to tick this off kind of way. Where, of course, you will see the comparisons to real life incidents are the cryptic notes that are being left at these crime scenes. Of course, so straight away, my mind went, oh, so we're doing the Zodiac Killer. And I don't mean that in a disparaging way. If you are writing a script in this day and age in which someone is using ciphers like that, your first thought is the Zodiac. You have other Fincher-related projects, of course, that you will think of. And again, these are knowingly dripped in throughout the film, because I think nowadays, one of the most clever things that you can do with the knowledge that your audience probably has seen a lot of this before is to tip your hat to it, hang a lampshade on it, use that knowledge to offset what the audience is expecting. We get a name drop which becomes so clever as the film goes on. That is, of course, Charles Manson. Carter says that, there's Manson, with this kind of belief in the devil, the occult, and to which Monroe's Harker goes, well, no, Manson had accomplices, Manson had his family, so no, he doesn't fit the bill. Hang a lampshade. Alicia Witt plays Harker's mother in this film, and she is quite sympathetic when we meet her. She is clearly a hoarder. We discover over the phone that she used to be a nurse. They do seem to at least have a relationship still, although it's suggested earlier on that they don't get to see each other very often. There is this question of how far away has Harker moved for her work. We get dotted in again that, the birthday's coming up. There's no surprise when we discover the birthday of Lee Harker. I mean, it's the 14th. We know this all the way through. Again, these are things of how is this going to play into the plot, not whether or not this will play into the plot. Witt's character being so sympathetic and so gentle, if you like, I think I was sunk hook, line, and sinker. I will say that I bought into her character, and this, of course, crucial for what we will come to learn. The film makes great use of the imagery of the mundane. You'll spend a lot of time looking at houses, at skyscapes, at landscapes, at trees, and at people's faces. Perkins is really clever in that he tends to focus the character right up there, center screen, as the scene is unfolding. Now, of course, what this also does is this leaves a lot of the background in shot, but there's nothing going on there, is there? We horror fans, what do? We're looking around every corner, we're looking at every door frame, we're looking at every staircase, we're looking at everything. And Perkins knows this. So the tension that builds from early on in the film and runs right the way through, because of what you think you are seeing, is so much more effective than showing the killer up front. And it's the Spielberg, the Jaws school of what do? Use it as sparingly as possible. And it only serves to strengthen the tone overall. Because also what it does is you care, or at least I really feel that you will, you care about Monroe's Harker. That as, seemingly unsettling and, slightly off as she is, you care enough because you want to know why. And I want her to be okay. She's quite likable as, standoffish as she is. Carter is so likable, you really, really, really want him to have a good ending. Other characters are less likable, and as I've said, we're going full spoilers. Let's talk about the Nicolas Cage in the room. Nicolas Cage being in this film was mostly hidden from the marketing campaign over the past half year. And I think very much for the better, because he's terrible. No, not at all. Because he is both, you're going looking for Nick Cage, you're gonna get Nick Cage. But what you also get is something entirely new. There's a lot of prosthetics going on. This character of Longlegs that he is playing is wrong. He is human, but he's not right. You don't want to meet this character. And yet at the same time, you don't get the impression, there's no super strength, there's nothing like that. He is a human being who's just weird and a bit erratic. There are enough scenes which show what I'm going to call the expected Cage-isms, but also entirely new ones. Now, I don't look at this performance and think, oh, there's Cage in Renfield. Oh, there's Cage in, Raising Arizona. No, you don't get that. But what you do get is an actor who you expect to be out there. You get him being out there, and it works. He is the bit of the film where everything goes to 150% and it's wild and there's screaming and there's singing, and yet even in a film as restrained as this, he's used so sparingly that it really does pay off. For those who are perhaps looking forward to a film in which there's this great final climactic chase or anything like that, you don't get that. And what you do get is a scene in an interrogation chamber between Cage's Longlegs and Monroe's Harker. If I'm being honest, you're not going to get a scene that's on par with, if you like, Lecter in the cage with Clarice Starling sitting outside. I don't think that we're up at that scale just yet. But what I do think is that both performers give it their all. And again, when you've got Monroe playing it so restrained, you really see how much she is committing when you have Nick Cage as over the top as he is. You know, this threat that he poses, and also this absolute confidence, which is one of the most unsettling things about Cage's performance here. They are such good foils for each other that I do feel that this is a scene that will be remembered for a long time to come. You get a little bit of the gore I mentioned in this scene. I think it's done quite well. If you like, this is the end of Longlegs, but of course, no, it isn't. There is a scene which I'm going to be slightly, I think, harsh on, and that is the scene featuring Kiernan Shipka's cameo. She plays the only known survivor of a Longlegs massacre before this, and honestly, it feels like a scene that was tacked on to the film. I was trying to put my finger on it, and you know, what the scene is doing is it's showing you this survivor of Longlegs who is clearly affected, very addled by what she went through and what she survived. What you really get is, in my opinion, Shipka playing roles we've seen Shipka play several times already. There's nothing new in this scene, and also it doesn't exactly advance the plot in any way. It's like we need one more creepy scene and we need a recognizable face. I feel the film would benefit from snipping the scene altogether. The couple of things that, you know, are important, the fact that this character survived a massacre, was comatose for so long, and only came out of the coma when visited by Longlegs, that could be lost easily. It does reveal that Longlegs knows who Harker is, but as the film goes on, again, not necessary. I feel you could trim it and the film would not lose anything. The biggest revelation, didn't even mean it. That worked out nicely. The biggest revelation in the film is the connection to, as we discover, the very real character of Satan in this film. And this is where I said the setting of the Satanic Panic is so important, because the Satanic Panic itself was largely debunked. You know, all of these reported stories of satanic cults, you know, rampant throughout the United States, nonsense. This goes, no, this is real. Satan is real, and Longlegs is using Satan's power to orchestrate these massacres. The exact how of this is he constructs, lovingly, dolls in which is placed an orb that contains Satan's essence, if you like. This is then delivered to the houses of, you know, people, and then Satan is released into the house. The people then, you know, are victims of murders. Satan has a great time. Loads of fun for everyone. And as this is revealed, you do get a scene in, it's effectively a morgue, and you have the mortician who's cutting open this doll, and it's just that one ekes a little too far into the camp, if you like. You know, he talks about hearing his ex-wife's voice, and it's very like, do you understand that this is weird? This is really weird. Did you get that, people in the back row? It's one of those moments where the film loses its sense of control a little bit, and I think for the worse, because no, we're there, we're getting it, you don't need this. There is another bit as well, which I would give it a down, which is that Harker cannot remember the events of her 9th birthday. And the events of her 9th birthday become so critical to what happens later on. There's no real explanation as to why she can't remember them. So for me, it's like, it's convenient that she doesn't remember them. Okay, that's but where I am going to turn that down into an up, if you like, is that to me is a suggestion of this kind of repression type of psychology itself, which has, you know, in certain circles has been debunked as well. This idea that, you know, we can recall these things that have happened, and then we'll remember what the devil did to us. Again, yep, debunked. It's actually a film I quite enjoyed called Regression, starring Ethan Hawke and Emma Watson, which I liked it. Critics maybe not so much. About this very thing. And I did feel that that was tying into this a little bit because, of course, as she remembers what happened, we get our big revelation. Do you remember I mentioned her mum? So the film opened, as it is revealed, although is no great surprise, Longlegs visiting Harker just before we then discover her 9th birthday. She was to be a victim of Longlegs, but her mother convinced him to spare her life, the deal being she would become his accomplice. So she was the one delivering these dolls to these poor families, all to keep her daughter safe. Now, Alicia Witt plays the hell out of this and leaves you with a question. And the question is, at what point did it stop being about keeping her daughter safe? And at what point did she begin to truly believe in Satan and begin to worship? As it is, I feel, very much revealed in the final scene in the Carter's house, as we all knew where we were going, that she is there very much to see this through to the end. Longlegs caught at this point, he's off the board. This should be the end of it. But no, she's there delivering the doll. The doll has already been released and has possessed the family. And sadly, yes, Carter does brutally murder his wife, which is thankfully done off screen. No one needed to see that. Carter himself is killed by Harker when he, still possessed, comes to kill her. But that does leave Carter's daughter, Ruby, seemingly possessed by the devil, possibly to continue the work of Longlegs or to be locked away forever, as Shipka's character was. I feel it works. I do feel it works. The two closing shots, if you like, of the film, in which Harker attempts to shoot the doll but realizes she's out of bullets and presumably has got one hell of an explanation job to the police in front of her, and we get a quick flashback to Longlegs before he dies saying, "Hail Satan." I thought this film was bloody good. I thought it was strong. I thought it had some really good performances. I thought the score by Zildjian, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, was very effectively used and very well done, and also knew when to use silence as well. I thought the look of the film was fabulous and it really held its tone. The CGI, which was there, was used sparingly and I think for the betterment of the film. The performances worked for me for the most part. As I say, some scenes could have been trimmed. They weren't needed for the plot. I thought, of course, Micah Monroe steals the show as Lee Harker. I think that restrained performance hopefully is going to see her getting a lot of recognition for this. Nicolas Cage, of course, playing the demented Longlegs. We will be talking about this for years to come. But yes, not to forget Blair Underwood and Alicia Witt as well. If you have watched this and you haven't seen the film, bold, you were warned about spoilers, but please do watch it. Even perhaps if you know what's coming, just to watch how it constructs that alone. Everything from the setting, the score, the direction, the writing, it all deserves the absolutely bonkers reception it's currently getting. This is doing well at the box office, it's doing well with critics, and if you can, do see it in the theater. It's not something, you don't require an IMAX screen or anything like it for this film, but for that sense of community that only comes with a theater, I think do try and get to see it in the cinema. Thank you very, very much for watching along. I hope you've enjoyed this review. If you'd like to hear me review any more films, please do let me know in the comments below. You can find me on various socials at Sean Ferrick. Please make sure you're following at What Culture Horror on the various socials as well. You are all awesome. You are wonderful. Keep things spooky until I see you again. You are brilliant. Thanks very much.